In a world where trauma is real, where people seek out distraction from their internal lives and relationships with others, and where no one is taught healthy self-care, help was needed. In 2019, the mission began. Find a way to help people understand and better their mental health. Seek out ways to explore relationships and how they work. Fight against the stigmas that surround counseling and therapy. And, most importantly,
do all of that so you don't have to be a therapist to understand it. Hey everybody. Welcome to Season 2 of Therapist Theater. I'm your host, Josh Treese. I'm a practicing therapist in Music City, USA, and every week a guest therapist, counselor, or social worker joins me here in the theater to talk about a movie that we've seen and what relationships or mental health issues it highlights. This week's guest is Amy Lazarov. Amy is a licensed professional counselor here in Nashville who specializes in working with teens, college-aged, and young adults, and focuses on trauma, anxiety, and life transitions. Thanks so much for downloading today's show. Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes, and while you're doing that, help other people find the show by giving it a 5-star rating and writing a review for it in the podcast app. One time, an assistant left the desk. Because she sliced her hand open with a letter opener. And Miranda missed Lagerfield just before he was about to board a 17-hour flight to Australia. She now has to dim the lights, raise the curtain, and start the previews. Welcome to the theater. Amy.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi.
I am so glad to finally meet you, and I say that because I was very late to our
No
appointment.
worries at all.
I like to start every conversation with my guests just asking, why therapy? Why do you do what you do?
Yeah, well, thanks so much for having me on, and I'm really excited to do this podcast. And so I always knew that I wanted to help people, but I wasn't sure in what capacity. I went to college as maybe a physical therapist, and then I realized I don't like science, so that switched. And
But you liked the word therapist.
I
and so
did.
you were
I
like,
did.
I just
liked
need the slide.
kind of relationship aspect. I was hurt as an athlete a lot as a kid and teen, so I think that's where I got the idea from.
Wow.
Yeah. So I took a counseling class my junior year of college, and I also took a mentoring class. So I mentored 2 high schoolers at Maplewood High School here.
A mentoring class?
Yeah, it was great. And we just kind of learned a lot about the relationship aspect, but also kind of the lower income community needs as well. So it was really cool experience. I ended up I still talk to the 2 guys today, have a relationship with them. So it was a great entry into kind of the counseling relationship, I think, or mentoring.
When you were in physical therapy as a student, did you feel like did you have the same physical therapist typically? Or was it like you'd show up at an office and whoever was available would help?
You usually had the same one.
Okay.
So
did
I
you
just
feel
developed a
that they
rapport and
connected with you?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, so it was cool to have that relationship that was outside of friends or outside of parents or, outside of different coaches or whatever, but just having that person that I saw once a week, basically, for a long period. So
that feels very transferable.
Yeah, it does. And I knew that helping people was the right direction. I think I just wasn't sure in what way.
Okay.
So
cool.
Yeah.
So how did you get from taking a class on counseling and on mentoring to deciding to swing into it?
Yeah. So I basically felt like it fit kind of the puzzle pieces I guess I was looking for. And so I applied to grad school. So it was a quick transition, I think, just figuring out that that was a good path. And I actually applied to school counseling because I thought that that was more aligned, because I love the school systems and I loved kind of like that environment. But I didn't realize that it wasn't mental health focused as much as like kind of scheduling or, and I hate that because I think school counselors offer a lot more than just kind of the administrative tasks.
Wondered, I mean, obviously, going through public school all the way myself, I was never in a, and really, I guess you could say, thank goodness, but never in a position that I had to take advantage of school counseling services. Yeah. However, other outside of planning my schedule and stuff, and so to me, my school counselor felt very administrative.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I always kind of wondered, was it the same kind of counselor as like a licensed professional counselor?
Sure.
However, placed kind of locally in a school for students to take advantage of.
Yeah, and I did my internships in the schools because I was still part of the school track. So it was a counseling graduate school program, and there were two tracks: the school counseling track and the mental health counseling track.
Is it close to career counseling? Is that kind of what they focus on?
No, it was more of kind of the social emotional part in school. But then when you did your internships, I felt like it was part social emotional, but then also part scheduling or administrative. And so that's when I realized, hey, I actually love the mental health side of this. So I stayed an extra year and did some of the additional credits for KCREP to get 60 credits.
Where'd you go to school?
I went to Vanderbilt.
Oh, cool.
So right around the corner.
Yeah.
So it ended up being a great experience. I still have great friends, like some of my best friends are from grad school. So I think I did it the right way to make sure to cover all my, X's and O's.
And grad counseling programs are a little bit like your cohort. It feels like you went to war together. So it's
absolutely.
I mean, my first 6, 7, 8 guests on the show were my cohort.
Oh yeah, that makes a lot of sense because you get to know each other so well, and you take, so many classes together and just have all those experiences. So I ended up doing that, and then I worked for Centerstone in school for a year, and then I worked at Stars. Which I don't know if you're familiar, but
actually, somebody from my cohort and one of the guests on the show, Katie Scott, is there now.
Oh, interesting, cool. Yeah, so I was at Fairview High School, kind of closer to Memphis, so it's a good 40-minute drive.
Yeah. Were you doing that every
day?
Wow.
Yeah, it was a lot. But so that was 3.5 years, and then I started my private practice while I was still there, and then kind of transitioned out.
Cool.
So I loved working in the schools, but I think it was just kind of time to go out on my own.
So, I mean, I think I hear what you're saying, like in the beginning through maybe taking a class and just kind of being willing to self-reflect. You just saw something in yourself that connected
definitely
with it. And then when you stepped into it going one direction. And I guess, continued self-reflection. You're like, maybe not the school thing. I'm going to go this way. It's almost like you continued to keep your eyes open as you were walking forward.
Yeah, I definitely think it was trial and error, and I kind of tell a lot of clients this because I work with, young adults, high schoolers through kind of 30s, that you don't have to know what you want to do. And it's kind of maybe relates to the movie I chose too, but it's kind of just, I think you try something and figure out what you like about it, what you don't like about it. And if there's another path to take, then you take it. But, nothing's permanent, I guess.
And discovering that you don't like something is just as valuable as discovering that you do like it or that you're good at it.
Absolutely.
Because I was listening to several weeks ago an episode of the Tim Ferriss Show podcast.
Okay.
He's like a productivity kind of systems guy. He wrote a book called The 4-Hour Workweek, but he had Brene Brown on.
Nice.
So, in the mental health field, you have to stand Brene Brown and, listen to everything. But she started talking about when her daughter went to college that she told her, we will pay for school as long as you don't know what you want to do. So
That's
take
great, actually.
as many different types of classes as you want. And she said her daughter is type A, Enneagram 3, achiever, go-getter. And so she went in going I want to be, X or Y or whatever. And Mom, you're supposed to know what your path is and get on it. And she said that she was no, that's not how this works. I think I heard a statistic that was something like 80% of people end up in a job that the degree they got in undergrad doesn't have anything to do with.
That's really interesting. Yeah,
And
I wouldn't be
so-
surprised.
Yeah. And so she told, her daughter, take all different types of classes, and her daughter signed up for like African American studies and like
Cool.
philosophy of this and this, that, and the other. And she said her daughter ended up coming back to her saying like, oh yeah, so this thing I thought I wanted to do, I don't want to do that anymore. But I've also learned I'm interested in this and I'm not interested in that.
Yeah.
And just in this effort to try to round things out. And I think that I have this type of personality trait where sometimes I get stuck because I think that I have to have a plan and get it perfect at the beginning.
Definitely.
And one thing that's kind of been ringing in my ears the past couple of years, and certainly helped me get the show started, and strangely enough has been coming up with clients lately, is this thing this old boss of mine said, where he said, if something's worth doing, it's worth doing badly. So just start and try.
Yeah.
And if you do it badly, then you do it over.
Right. You don't
And
lose anything.
Yeah,
by trying.
you do it over. Yeah. But if you convince yourself you got to have a perfect plan from the beginning, you may never take that first step and get moving.
Yeah. I mean, I've heard a quote that you can't like do the afternoon based on the morning's plan. And
I like that.
that really resonates with me just because I feel like I am such a planner. I'm my mother. she'll listen to this. But basically, I have a to-do list and everything, and I'm very organized. However, you don't know what's going to happen during the day. And so it's harder to really stick to something if things go awry and you can't kind of come up with the next path.
Yeah. And I think it's a delicate balance. Like, you don't want to be totally off the cuff and impulsive because that means you lack intention.
Sure.
But you also don't want to like get locked into something and be so rigid that you have no flexibility or margins or ability to adapt.
Exactly. Yeah.
So I think you just reflect and you use intention and you do the best you can. And that's about the best anybody can do, really.
Yeah. I feel like I was always so type A and very perfectionistic.
Yeah.
And as I've gotten older and kind of more in this field, I've realized that we all, have our stuff. And I've become way more laid back, way more kind of go with the flow. Not for everything, but for a lot of things.
Yeah.
And I just feel like that's benefited me so much instead of trying to have that, every single thing controlled. So, yeah, it's definitely been a growing process.
I think it's so interesting how some people's work is I stick too much to a plan and I can't adapt, and so I got to learn to loosen up. And some people's work is I'm too chaotic and I'm too all over the place and I got to kind of focus in. And I think both types of work, and of course there's all kinds in the middle, it's all valuable because we're all people and we're all just learning how to be people.
Yeah, I mean, I absolutely, always talk to my clients about the gray and not having kind of the all or nothing or the black and white thinking, because I think everything can be gray or is gray, because I think when we're too extremes, you're missing out on a little bit, or you're not kind of giving the option for another option.
Yeah.
So, with the gray, I just think that it allows for so many more life experiences, or more like letting other people in, or letting kind of, I don't know, the expectations are more manageable, I think, in that way.
Yeah, that was a lot of my personal work is learning to stand in the gray.
Yeah.
And I was in a session one time with a client, and I said, I wish that I could claim that I planned this out better, but everything in my office is gray, like the carpet, the furniture, like everything is gray. And so I was like, I wish I could have said I planned this, but like right now we're in the gray. And so kind of using that to bounce off something else. But yeah, it's like I said, that's the type of personality that I have. So I get it. And I really like how, you had enough courage to continue to step forward and then continue to adapt as you went, and being open to discovery.
Yeah.
I think it's one of the coolest parts of life.
I agree. And I still think I am still on that path. I don't know. I've kind of continued to tweak specialties and tweak, populations that I'm interested in working in, but I also do a lot of volunteer work for things that maybe I don't see in my practice. So I'm kind of still figuring out what are my interests and what's guiding kind of my direction.
Well, I think that our personal lives as therapists naturally bleed into our practices. So it's really important that we continue to grow outside of academia or outside of our practice.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Because that's going to help feed into what we do.
Yeah. And I also wanted to tell you, I got this office and it was furnished, but my office would have been gray. So it's my favorite color.
Oh man, I like it, but
Yeah.
it's also, you know, kind of a all right. Well, if it's all kind of the same color, I don't have to think too hard about
Decorating. Yes, exactly.
Yeah, and
So-
I got to a place where when I finally got my own office, I was absolutely sure I would know what to do with it. But
Yeah.
then the week before I moved in and I had to furnish it, I realized, oh, I have been thinking about a personal office forever. And my counseling office, I have not thought about.
Yeah.
And that's going to be a lot different.
Definitely
Because
different.
it's got to be considering making a guest comfortable and
Sure.
not just me.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, I can't just paint the walls with Marvel Comics stuff. I got to, you know, consider
Right.
somebody coming in and being able to hold that space.
Definitely.
So let's talk about a movie.
Yeah.
What movie
Sounds
did you
great.
bring for us to talk about today?
So I picked The Devil Wears Prada
Nice.
because I feel like I specialize kind of in young adults, and that seemed to hit home for me in terms of kind of the expectations of, you know, Anne Hathaway in it and the main character and what job she was looking for. But also I think there's relationships in there. I think there just are a lot of themes that I see in my practice are in the movie.
You're going to have to forgive me. I'm looking up on IMDb the
Oh,
page
you
because
were
I
good.
forget the character names to like every movie.
I watched it last night and I still don't think I
I
can
watched it
tell
this
you her
morning.
name.
So every now and
Andy.
then.
There you go.
Yes,
Andy.
because of scheduling, I've got to watch the movie the morning of. I'm super thankful because there's been several of them that have been like super heavy traumatic movies.
Oh gosh, yeah. I looked at your list and I was like, whoa.
Yeah, like, you know, Rocket Man. There's this part towards the end where Elton John is sitting in this 12-step group and he confronts his inner child and all this. My wife comes downstairs like 6:30 in the morning. I'm crying my eyes out in the living room. She's like, "Are you okay?" I'm like, "This movie is so good." So when you told me that you were picking Devil Wears Prada,
Yeah.
I immediately started the Michael Scott jokes from the episode of The Office that he or that Pam says that he had just watched it. And my wife is a giant Office fan too. So
I love The Office. So
that works
much.
out.
Yeah.
What was it about this movie that stuck out to you that made you want to talk about it?
I think that it's a well-known movie, and so I liked that aspect because I thought that more people would listen.
Did
if
Meryl
it
Streep
was,
win an Oscar for it?
You know, she might have.
It's almost safe to assume if she's in it.
Right.
that
Then she's, yeah. So selfishly, it was a well-known movie, and I thought that would.
She got nominated.
Okay.
She didn't win. And nominated for Best Costume Design, but didn't win for that either.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, she played a really good role. But yeah, I felt like it was a relatable movie to a lot of people in terms of like having that ideal job or thinking that, you know, you're going to get to the next level by doing this job and then kind of being miserable in it.
Did it start as her ideal, though? It felt like
No.
she just kind of showed up.
Yeah, she was just trying to find
And
a
I'm
job.
not quite... Did they say how she found out about it?
They didn't. She met with HR, but that was
Okay.
it. And she was like, yeah, I just ended up here. And I think she was just having trouble finding a job.
Maybe she
So.
just wanted magazine work.
Yeah,
And so they ended up...
kind of did that.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I think it's, you know, it was interesting her kind of transition from just being there and kind of like soaking it all in, but not really being part of it, to kind of transforming into what they wanted her to be.
Mm-hmm.
And then her later realizing that that wasn't exactly what she thought herself, you know, thought of herself,
Mm-hmm.
or that like that wasn't who she wanted to be.
Yeah. What when she first shows up in the office of the magazine, it's very clear, although maybe not to her totally, that she's a fish out of water.
Right.
It feels like everybody else in that office could fit into one category.
Absolutely.
And then she's like in another.
Yeah.
That I'm trying to think if that was me walking into that office. I don't know if I would have kept walking in, maybe.
Right.
Because I felt a little bit of that way anywhere that I went when I first moved to Nashville.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
I felt like I was not cool enough to be there no matter where there was.
Right.
So I guess I get that a little bit, but, you know.
Yeah, I get what you mean. Like it feels nerve-wracking probably for anyone to walk into any office, let alone that kind of experience where you feel super different from everybody else there.
And I mean, people looking her up and down with the clothes. I mean, making outright comments on them.
Or gestures. Or,
Yeah. What do you think it was? Because upon that first kind of like walk-in, obviously she sees that she doesn't match with others.
Sure.
Obviously they confront her with that
Right.
Outwardly. But she also ends up going into, you know, Meryl Streep, Miranda's office and talking with her. And I mean, I don't know if getting judged is like quite, I mean, certainly evaluated. It was a job interview.
Yeah.
So that's like part of it, but
Right.
she didn't really engage her that much.
Yeah.
So like, what is it that you think made her want to stick with it? Like,
that's a great question. I mean, I think knowing that could lead to other opportunities that she was actually interested in. I think also maybe the desperation of finding a job.
Which she didn't even know that. People were telling her
You're
that.
right. You're right.
People were like, millions of girls would kill
That's
for this
right.
job.
You're right. Later on. But
and I think that she was
yeah.
really just thinking it was an assistantship, secretarial kind of.
I think just having it seemed like she had just graduated from college and kind of was in a place where I need a job and I'm something close to what I'm interested in, just to put on my resume.
Yeah.
So I wonder if it was more of just that, not desperation to find a job, but that need.
So I had a thing inside of myself, and I remember it clearly in my undergrad coming out a lot, and I think in my adult years it comes out a little, where if I got the vibe off of someone that they didn't like me or that they didn't approve of me or something like that, I took it as a challenge to win them over. And the way that I said that sounds really healthy. That sounds like that I had no codependency issues and that, you know, it was mainly like, I'm going to get friends. But, I think that there's, you know, an unhealthy side to that. And it was like, oh, I'm not okay if people don't, you know, kind of like me.
Yeah.
Do you think that, you know, when she encountered what I'm assuming she perceived as a tremendous challenge, even that first time, that there was anything inside of her that was like, you know, I'll show you.
Yeah, I bet I kind of got that feeling just when she was like laughing at when they had the two like blue belts, just kind of like, this is ridiculous. But, you know, like I felt like she wasn't scared of really being there. I think she was just...
And of Miranda.
Yeah.
Although everybody else around her was.
Right, was
and
jumping
kind of
at
telling
every
her
minute.
that she should be.
Yeah, so I felt like there was some sense of maybe challenge, or I'm going to show them that normal people can do this too, or, you know, you don't have to dress the way you're dressing, or that kind of stuff.
Or even I wonder if it was she just didn't know to be scared.
Yeah. That could have been it too.
And is something worth being scared of if you don't know?
Well, and I think she also felt really proud of what she had accomplished in college and her articles that she'd written. And, you know, so I think there was a side of her too that she was like, no, I belong, you know, here. I belong in a position that is going to get me somewhere.
Yeah. She felt very proud of her accomplishments until everybody pooped on them.
That's true. Yeah.
So I want to talk about Miranda.
Yeah.
Because I think that, like, so this was my first time watching the movie.
Oh, okay.
But, I mean, like you said, it's a very well-known movie.
Yeah.
It is referenced a lot.
Definitely.
I mean, there's an episode of The Office where, like, Michael watches it and starts quoting it and yelling out, "Steak! Give me Armani!" And then apologizes to Pam once he gets to the end.
I love it.
But I think I was kind of amazed. So I knew going in, she's playing a boss that everybody is scared to death of.
Yeah.
And so I think going in, I pictured, or I expected her to be a little bit like J.K. Simmons in Whiplash. Did you ever see that?
I didn't.
Okay. J.K. Simmons is a music teacher that is abusive.
Okay.
Like, he drives his students
Yeah.
to the point of them having mental breaks.
Wow.
So in the end, what ends up happening is Miles Teller becomes this drummer who is incredible, but then you're left with the question of at what cost. And so I think that I was and I'm talking about like he yells at them, he hits them.
Oh, gosh.
So I think I was expecting her to be this boss because I had heard about the movie
Sure.
and everybody is so scared of her, that was going to be this like,
Kind of aggressive.
overwhelming, aggressive presence. And then what I was met with was somebody who never speaks above a whisper and who I never saw like outwardly, I don't know, threaten
Yeah.
a person.
Yeah.
But, if you want to talk about explicit and implicit messages,
Absolutely.
her outside may be communicating one thing, but everybody knows what's going on her
Yeah,
inside. And there's
absolutely.
even this scene where Stanley Tucci like explains what her different looks mean
Yeah.
when somebody is presenting her with stuff. And he said when she purses her lips,
Right.
like that's the worst.
Or,
And
yeah.
right about that time, this designer that's showing it sees her turn her head just slightly and like very slightly purse her lips, and he immediately stops mid-sentence and it's like, just get it away.
Yeah.
We don't need to do anymore. Like,
Right.
so it's like everybody around her is scared to death, but so I was just amazed that somebody can hold that kind of emotional
power.
space with never raising their voice.
Yeah. She definitely, I think body language was huge in everything she did. You could really, and facial expressions, like you were just saying, you can really tell what she was thinking just by, what she was putting out there without words.
But even then, could you? Because Andy needed Stanley Tucci to explain it to her. So it's
Right.
it's almost like you need a code. You need a legend when you get in to understand what's going on with her.
Yeah. I also think that Andy wasn't like in the world, kind of like in that, arena already. So I wonder if like somebody else, like the old internship or like old people, not internships, but old people that were fired previously, if they kind of knew what she was like, kind of her, around town, like hearing about who she is and how she kind of runs the magazine. So
Well, she was a giant in that world, in that industry.
Yeah.
But it almost feels like, part of becoming a part of that world, that was a part of the indoctrination, like learning to be afraid of Miranda.
Yeah.
And I guess really, because Miranda's the big boss,
Right.
if you don't, and she just fires you at the beginning
Then
because you didn't know what to look for in her, then you don't get to be a part of the world. So
Yeah.
I guess it's just one of those you learn on your first day, like, hey.
Yeah, and I kind of thought Anne Hathaway did a lot of trial and error too, kind of like made a mistake, realized her mistake or was corrected, and had to kind of correct and adapt her own behavior to figure out how to deal with Miranda.
Yeah. Yeah, I thought at one point, because I've been talking with several clients about this lately, if Andy would have had a big presence of willfulness inside of her, she would not have probably made it past the first day.
Absolutely.
Because I could imagine if I went into that office for that job and I was in unhealth,
Sure.
if somebody would have made a comment about my shoes and handed me another pair of shoes, I'd have been like, you can
Right.
take these back and put them in your pockets for all I care, because I'm not going to wear these. Like,
Right.
I'm sitting behind a desk. Nobody's seeing my feet.
Yeah.
But and I think at the very beginning, there were little tiny moments of that. But then she very quickly, she went back and grabbed the shoes.
Yeah,
She very quickly
absolutely.
started listening and rolling with it. And
Yeah. Well, and I felt like she felt like the job was important to her. And I don't know in what aspect, because I wasn't there, but, I don't know if it was because she had a job or if it was because of what ended up being a really kind of highly wanted job or, highly sought after. So yeah, I don't know what her motivation was for staying, But I think that some of the things that with that kind of job or those expectations is that, like, how much are you willing to adapt? And how much is it ruining your self-care? How much is it ruining other aspects of your life? You know, because we saw that with her, that everything else kind of went by the wayside.
Yeah, and I think, expectations are, especially unsaid expectations, or something that is going to get you at any job. It's going to get you in any relationship.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so I think that, I didn't see her walk in with a job description for that.
Right.
But I would imagine she did walk in with a one-page printed resume that she handed
Definitely.
Miranda.
Yeah.
But I would imagine that, she starts getting hit with all of these. And I don't know if you can count it as an unsaid expectation when people are literally telling you, but they're telling you in the moment.
Sure.
So, like, clearly dress code was a thing that, like, which I get. You're in fashion.
Right.
Like, if you don't kind of lean into that, then are you really passionate about this job? Do you really care about it? But I mean, I think that there were so many, I don't know what to call them other than like behavioral expectations that all centered around Miranda.
Yeah.
It was as if like, she's this force that wherever she goes, everybody has to orient around her and kind of conform to, I don't know, her whims or her mood or whatever it is that she, is wanting at the moment.
And it just seemed like a pretty toxic relationship from all aspects, because you're basically trying to get approval and acceptance from Miranda when she's not giving it out, or you're not getting any, signs or inclination that like that's actually coming your way. Yeah. So, I mean, I think it's energy draining, or at least sounds like it to me, to have to kind of be on edge 24/7 to deal with Miranda, but then you're not getting that feedback or you're not getting that praise that may keep you going in it.
Yeah. It feels like a very one-way relationship.
Yeah, absolutely.
What do you think it was about Miranda that allowed that kind of environment to be created? Like, why aren't people just telling her off left and right?
Yeah.
Why didn't somebody try to shove her out a window?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question. I don't know if it's because she had been there for so many years and that just kind of created that culture, or if it was that no one was wanting to stand up to her and get maybe a bad rap in the industry. I don't know. It's a good question.
Because, I mean, clearly in her industry, like, she has the taste. She has, like, I don't know. Is it knowledge? I don't know where you would consider style. Is style a learned skill? Is it something that is innately within you? Is it something that you sharpen? Like, she has that moment where she talks about when Andy's wearing this like blue sweater.
Yeah.
It's not blue, it's cerulean, and it started with this designer and then went to this person, this person, and this person. So like, you're in the room with the people that picked what you're wearing and you didn't even realize it. Like, so I mean, clearly there's a knowledge base.
Sure.
Which that feels like, I remember being a kid and not knowing a thing about sports and asking a buddy of mine, how do you know athlete names and stats and this, that, and the other? And he was like, how do you know stuff about comic book characters? He's like, it's just what you're interested in.
Sure.
So like, clearly there's a knowledge base and a passion, and when you lean into combining those two things, you get what. But was it just that she was so good at what she did, she was indispensable, and so everybody just put up with it? And
yeah, and I guess there also is that hierarchy feeling too, whereas like, who would have taken her like position, or who would have, and I know we saw at the end of the movie where that almost happened, but she was too good at figuring out how to keep that position. So maybe it was willpower, maybe it was her own motivation to kind of keep that where it was.
You think she was a narcissist?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah. I think so.
Because I think at the end she shows that she cares about, or maybe she doesn't show that she cares about Andy, but she at least like identifies with her. There's some kind of inkling of a connection.
I think it's still for her own benefit though. Like knowing that like, oh, we're similar.
What about the letter of reference at the end to the new job? Because that doesn't benefit her at all.
That's true.
Maybe Andy was the variable that cracked that egg a little bit.
Yeah,
and,
or
like,
that
warmed her up.
she saw a different way of doing things.
And I wonder if she would have had as much affection for her. That's way overstating it because she barely liked her. But I wonder if that was because Andy chose to stand up to her and throw her phone in the fountain and get out of there.
Like actually kind of told her
oh,
off
you're
in
a
a
real
way.
person. Like you're not just a yes person that's going to cave to everything I want.
Yeah.
I was just fascinated by the way that she dominated everything that she was in.
Yeah. Just every aspect of that company, but even just the personalities, the relationships at work, it was all about her.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What else stood out to you in the movie?
Yeah. I mean, I think, like we were saying earlier, just every aspect of Andy's life kind of revolved around the job. And it felt like she lost, the relationship with her boyfriend. She lost friends, kind of that closeness that she had with friends. She really put everything on the back burner when it came to the job. And I think part of it was maybe forming her identity and forming part of, how she saw herself. And then it kind of evolved over time. And then kind of she got that reality check and was like, oh, wait, this isn't the direction I want to go in. But I just think there are a lot of themes that young adults struggle with today, is like trying to get the best job they can, or trying to be in the best industry, or, having to live up to expectations that are their own or their parents or societies or whatever. And just like the fact that busyness is so, approved of in society, when really, as you and I both know, self-care and figuring out ways of resting and ways of taking advantage of that time, that downtime, that a lot of people don't seem to value, but if they try it, they end up valuing it. I don't know. I just think that there were so many themes of, again, identity, relationships, kind of coming of age, or the, young 20s right after college, figuring yourself out, even figuring out boundaries, which I think was big eventually for Andy.
Let me ask you this. Do you think that boundaries are a privilege? Like, because it seems like, just in the context of that movie.
Yeah.
Miranda, very able to, and I don't know if you could say that these were healthy boundaries, but certainly she got to determine what her time looked like.
Sure.
She got to determine when she engaged with certain people. Whereas, Andy and some of the Emily Blunt's character, his name I think was Emily. Always easy to remember your character's name when it's your own. They were kind of on call 24/7. Do you think that boundaries are a privilege, or do you think it's something that every person needs to fight for, needs to have?
Yeah. I think that's a great question. I think there's different types of boundaries. So, I mean, in a work scenario, you're not going to be able to tell your boss no all the time. However, I think you can advocate for yourself in terms of like, oh, hey, I'm coming in an extra hour, early. Is it okay if I leave an extra hour, or leave an hour early at the end of the day, or just, I get that, you don't have control over a lot of things in the workspace. However, I think there are a few things that if you're noticing that your mental health's declining, or you notice that, you're not having as much work-life balance, I think you can kind of advocate for yourself in different ways. But I do understand your point in that, like, not every scenario or not every situation is going to allow for every boundary that you can even come up with to kind of enact.
Yeah. And I mean, Andy did continue to choose to go deeper into that world.
Absolutely.
Maybe there's a way that she could have done that job more as a surface level kind of I don't know about that job.
Yeah, that one I think is different.
Yeah.
that one seemed extreme.
I think personal assistant or whatever her kind of thing was, I think the job is to be on call. The beck and call. But I think it was, something along the lines of like, if, this is a crucible. Like if you can last a year in this, you can get a job anywhere.
Right. So knowing that it's kind of temporary as well,
Oh, that's interesting. So like, thinking about maybe if she knew how challenging it would be, but also knew that it was bound to an era, like bound to a certain amount of time.
Yeah, then maybe it feels more manageable.
But that also feels like something where if she knew all that stuff going in, she could have communicated it to her boyfriend.
Yeah.
So that he could have been in on it.
I don't know if she knew it going in, though.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
like I think that as the days went on, she got more insight into what that job required.
But it did feel like she stopped talking to him about
Yeah.
it at some point.
Yeah, it did.
Because I know that, like, I mean, even in our marriage, you know, we got engaged with, I think, a year of grad school left for
Oh, wow.
me.
Yeah.
And at that point, still in classes, started clinical internship,
Yeah.
and I'm working
Guys
part-time.
had a lot going on.
And we're planning the wedding.
Sure.
1 day a week off, which, you know, if you got 1 day off, you got no days off.
Right.
So, I mean, but it was something that heading into it, like we talked about, knowing what this is going to bring, is it the right time?
Yeah.
Can we support each other? Knowing that we're talking about a fixed, temporary
Definitely.
amount of time. And it felt
Yeah.
like at some point, as she learned what the job was, instead of, you know, hey, Adrian Grenier from Entourage, this is now what it's becoming.
Sure.
Tell me where you're at in it. What do you need? I want to make sure that we stay connected.
Right.
Instead, it was kind of like I
Sorry.
didn't come home one night. Or, what do you mean you're going to Paris for a week? Or, it's his birthday party and one of their friends is calling because she's not there and now she's not going to make it. And
Right. Yeah, it felt like she lost sight of that relationship when she kind of got more invested in the job. And I don't know if that was like, I think that was obviously something that she could have changed or could have put more effort into the relationship or had those types of conversations that you were just talking about, you know, with communication of like, hey, I'm being open, I'm being honest, I'm being vulnerable, this is what's going on, and trying to manage it together rather than separately.
And my hope would be that it's the kind of relationship to where, you know, there's enough open and honest communication about what's going on inside of you that even if it's not like he likes where it's going, he could maybe still be supportive.
Yeah.
Ask for what he needs. Like she could, you know, do the same because, you know, if two people get together and they have careers and they're ambitious, there's going to be stuff that you have to kind of like sacrifice at the altar of progress.
Absolutely.
But, you know, you're together for a reason.
Sure.
Like you're supporting each other. You're on the journey together. So
yeah. And I think throughout a relationship, there are times when one partner is, you know, busier than the other, or one partner supports the other in a different way. So I think that this could have been the time when he was supportive to her, but I don't know if she kind of shared the needs or shared, you know, kind of the insight of what was happening.
I also got this message towards the end, and I'm trying to be really like aware that movies are purposefully directing your sympathy and attention and things like that. So, you know, they end up breaking up, and I don't remember. Did they break up before Paris?
That's a good question.
Because she ends up sleeping with the mentalist,
right?
Whose name I can't remember.
I think that they were on a break.
Oh, they Ross and Rachel it.
They like separated.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think. Yeah.
So they end up breaking up for good, and then she comes back and kind of apologizes to him.
Yeah.
But he tells her, I got this job being a sous chef in Boston, and then she ends up taking this job in New York. So they like stay broken apart.
Yeah.
I got this message, you know, throughout that part that like, you know, hey, it didn't feel like she felt like she lost anything. At the end, it felt like her character was to be praised for this growth and this like bravery. But I'm kind of thinking, oh man, you kind of railroaded your boyfriend. Like you were kind of awful to him.
Yeah. You didn't seem super emotional or like, when the apologies seemed not super sincere. I mean, I guess it was genuine, but it wasn't like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry that I did this. You know, taking a lot of responsibility.
And a lot of times in movies, what they'll do is they'll make the boyfriend kind of a jerk So
Sure.
that when they end up in the place with the better job and
Yeah.
independence and all that, you're like, yeah, better off without him.
Right.
But in this one, I was like, oh, no, she kind of was the jerk.
Yeah, she wasn't the nice or like helpful partner, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I got that message at the end. I was like, oh, I don't know if they wanted me to get that message.
Right.
Like, I don't know if they wanted me to think
You're
that
like,
about her.
no, she apologized, but like I just don't know. Yeah, it felt like she was kind of removed from it a little bit.
And it felt a little bit like kind of a mismatched theme because Miranda's kind of journey throughout the movie was she ends up on the path towards divorce from her husband.
Yeah.
So she actually ends up at the end more isolated, more alone. All she's got is her work. And so you would think that they would take Andy's character and head it in a different direction.
Right.
More connected, more joined, more integrated. And yet at the end, all she's got is her work.
Yeah.
She's left on her own.
Yeah, you still saw the same pattern play out
Yeah.
in a sense. Yeah.
Yeah.
It was interesting because I have a lot of young adults or young professionals in here that like work is everything in that path. And I think we as humans just sometimes lose sight that like we need connection and we need those relationships or just need that companionship because I think there's a lot of aspects that are missing when you're just focused on work. And I get it, like being successful, but I think redefining success and
Yeah.
redefining like what are the other aspects of your life that are not meeting the expectations because you've put them down.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, and I think, okay, you're making me aware. Like, I don't want to say that if you have a great job but not a relationship that you're a failure. I don't wanna put-
and that's not what I mean
I don't
either.
want to, well, that's
Yeah.
what I'm afraid I'm saying. I don't
Sure.
want that to be something I'm saying because I don't believe that at all. I
Yeah.
think you get to choose how your life wants to go.
Yeah.
I just think kind of looking at it as a story and looking at it as character
Right,
development, it
right.
seemed like that was a mismatch in themes. And it seemed like while she may have felt, I don't know, personally fulfilled towards the end,
Yeah.
that it really minimized the loss.
Yeah. No,
of
I
that
see what you're saying. And
relationship.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to go that direction either because that's not,
No, I think
not
it's
what
a
I
really
think.
good point because I mean
But-
that's why you picked the movie was
Yeah.
like development across, I don't know, adolescence into young adulthood and
Yeah.
adulthood. These are things that everybody
themes.
deals with.
Yeah.
And I mean, certainly, like I dealt with it. I mean, it's this delicate balance, and I think it's figuring out how to be a person.
Mm-hmm.
Is it possible to give all of my attention to my relationships and my job and all these other things at
Right.
the same
It's
time?
hard to juggle.
Do I need to be like the Eye of Sauron, and at one point I'm concentrating on this thing, and then at one point on another, and I'm learning to juggle or whatever. I don't think there's a right and a wrong.
Right.
Like, I don't think that there is a, well, you better do it this way,
Sure.
or this template.
Yeah.
I just think that, like, she clearly cared about that guy.
Yeah. And it seemed at the end that there wasn't really.
Then she could have took him or left him.
Exactly.
Yeah.
No, I totally see your point for sure. He didn't. She acted like they were friends, or that like they didn't have a lot of history. Kind of. Yeah.
Which, I mean, we don't know.
Sure.
Maybe at the beginning they had just moved in together.
Right.
I don't know.
Right. But yeah, it did seem like she was content where she was without kind of that relationship.
I also wonder, this is a weird kind of like, I don't know why my brain grabbed onto this, but at one point in the movie, I think early on, she ends up having dinner with her dad, I think. And her dad passes across the table an envelope with money in it. Says,
Yeah.
I don't want you to get behind on your rent.
Absolutely.
Clearly, she is still being supported by her parents.
Sure.
And I would imagine partly her boyfriend.
Yeah.
Like, lately on my YouTube, when I'm watching YouTube, you know, there's the algorithm that recommends stuff, and it's recommending stuff to keep you on YouTube. There's all these videos popping up of micro apartments in New York City. I have no idea why. I didn't like one or something like that, but it's, and I'm seeing like 100 square feet, 70 square feet in Greenwich Village, which is $1,500 a month rent.
Sure.
Which is more than my mortgage
Right.
for 70
Right.
square feet. But, you know, they're in a decent size apartment, her and her boyfriend. And like, if she just graduated from college,
Yeah.
she wasn't making any money,
Right.
like zero.
Right.
So maybe it's being supported off his income, but dad's also passing her money.
Yeah.
So I think that kind of goes back to like the privilege conversation of
Yeah.
like, maybe she's able to do this job and like kind of be so chaotic.
Sure.
Because she doesn't have to think about, all right, well, if I burn myself out, I'm not going to be able to have an income.
Right. Kind of
she can just get money.
Yeah. And not having to think about kind of other responsibilities or other kind of things that are important, you know, financially as well, just to be able to support yourself and be independent. And I think that's definitely a struggle I see in my clients as well, is that they want to be independent so badly, but it's like what opportunities are coming their way, or what, you know, what do they have to take in order to get to the next step job wise? And maybe it doesn't pay enough, you know? And so it definitely is a dilemma.
Yeah. I saw a tweet like a while ago. My wife and I had been caught up in like a comparison game for a little bit where we saw like other couples that are like going on all these trips.
Sure.
Where they got this giant house and they're like our age, and it's like, man, we're doing the best we can, and we don't have the. And so I saw this tweet that said like something along the lines of, you know, if you're working as hard as you can to make ends meet, and you see other people with similar jobs at similar ages going on trips and buying big things, be for sure that it's their parents paying for that stuff.
That's interesting.
And it was like, I think at that moment when I read it and I told my wife, it was like this kind of like, oh.
Like that's how.
It's not a level playing field. It's not a one-to-one comparison.
Yeah.
Like we're not doing bad.
Right.
We may not be able to do that stuff, but everything we do is we're doing it.
Yeah.
You know, and so I think that there was some level of comfort in going and even saying that we got caught up in a comparison game. You know, there's a little bit of shame in saying that, but like having to realize, you know, to compare yourself to other people, it's not always a one-to-one kind of thing.
Right. Well, and I think that's just human to compare yourselves, you know, and I think having that rational moment of like, oh wait, we're doing just fine, you know? And I think
we got money in savings.
Yeah.
We own a home.
We're good.
Like, I mean,
yeah, exactly. I think it's just where people even prioritize their finances or like that too. But I get what you're saying, that it's not just like everyone's starting out on the same playing field. And I think social media, you know, which wasn't luckily probably with The Devil Wears Prada, because that maybe could have gotten worse, but you know, that kind of
they still had
they still had was it a BlackBerry?
The big I thought it was like a sidekick.
Okay, I think you're right. It was
Meryl Streep had a razor.
That's right.
She had a flip razor.
Yeah.
And I thought, oh, that's interesting.
Yeah,
there was a point in time where that razor was like the pinnacle of.
It definitely dates it, the movie.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I even on social media, you know, some things that I know are triggers for me, even like I know I have to watch that, and so I think that's a great conversation that I have with clients a lot too, is that like, is it benefiting you to go on and see all these, you know, kind of fake,
comparing their highlight reel to your everyday.
Yeah, and it's not real. And so, you know, I think it's a tough conversation, or just a tough way of navigating. Like I had somebody give it up for Lent, social media, and she's been doing great since then. So, I mean, I think it's something to think about, even though it's a hard step to take. It's definitely, if that's a trigger for you, knowing that and having that awareness.
Well, what's interesting is it's almost like built into people's lives now.
Yeah.
Whereas like when I came up, there was no such thing as social media.
Right.
Like I remember MySpace being something I got on after college.
Yeah.
And I know for a fact, like if all of that stuff would have been around when I was in middle school and high school, I don't know if I'd have made it through. Like, I struggled with self-esteem and like being bullied and just feeling less than so much. If people could have reached out and told me that 24 hours a day.
Sure. How do you escape it?
I don't know. Yeah.
And working at the high school, I mean, I saw so much of that, you know, just like, oh, this person, you know, posted this on Snap, or, you know, it was just like a constant. And that was where a lot of the drama stemmed from, was social media. And I think just it's scary. I have two nieces. They'll be 4 and 2 soon. And, you know, I think it's scary to even think that they're going to have phones and they're going to have access to social media. And, you know, how do you kind of go about that?
Is it possible to not now?
Right.
Because I know that like a lot of parents, I mean, my wife and I don't have kids, but we have a 1-year-old nephew, and we're talking about wanting to have kids, and we're even starting to talk about, like, you know, thinking about when do you let your kid have all that. I wonder if it's even possible to be in this world now without being, I don't know, isolationist and not have that kind of stuff.
Well, and luckily there's so many parental control apps now and things of that nature that I think you just have to be responsible, kind of, in a sense. You know, and have those discussions with your kids and let them know you trust them, but there are, you know, things out there that are easy to get to. And, you know,
I think that's the key. It's helping your kid. You don't want to isolate your kid from the world.
Right.
You want to help guide them and help. I mean, how many clients come into your office where they're just feeling out how to engage in their feelings because mom and dad didn't teach them.
Right. Oh, I have so many clients that don't know how to identify what their emotions are.
Yeah. Is there tell me other stuff from the movie that stuck out to you?
Yeah. I think, you know, my fiance and I were watching it last night and we were like, don't remember it being so extreme. Like watching kind of what Andy had to go through or just like all the tasks or just how abrasive kind of some of the things were. And so I think that stuck out because I don't think it did when I watched it probably 5 years ago, you know, like, so I don't know what changed in my mentality from then
you've
to now.
changed.
That's true.
So maybe,
that's true.
Maybe it's like the filters that you have that it runs through.
And now is like, you know, thinking about my clients, I'm like, wait, that's too much. Like, you know, like that's a lot of stress and, you know, just overwhelming. So I think part of it was seeing her transformation from kind of not caring to caring and kind of getting the job. Like she ended up being better at the job, or that more, you know, people not appreciated, but people approved of her more when she looked the part. But then what did she lose to get that? I also thought that it's interesting with Emily that she played the part the whole time and then kind of got backstabbed. Not really by Andy, but by, you know, Miranda.
Really by Andy. I mean,
she did it.
That's kind
she
of like what
to.
Miranda highlights that ends up kind of snapping Andy out of it was, oh, no, like, you did do what I did. Yeah. You did step over someone. Although that doesn't totally feel like the same thing because Miranda was basically saying you're going to Paris or else you're not going to work here.
Right. It was kind of an ultimatum. So I don't know. I kind of felt empathy for Emily, you know, maybe not the whole time, but part of the time just to be in that role and be on 24/7 and then to kind of not get what she was expecting or had worked so hard for. I just thought the organizational structure was also really interesting, just how there were so many different parts that led to Miranda, of course, but then it just seemed like there weren't other people that were in charge in any way. I mean, Stanley Tui was,
maybe
but then,
like the guy in the elevator who
right,
was like the
Herb
chairman of the board of the, I don't
name?
think he's the publisher. I don't know. He was above Miranda.
Yes.
And you know, the part at the end where they were going to make a move and like hire the younger lady to take Miranda's place.
Yeah.
And then I actually had to like look up on Wikipedia the plot summary because when Miranda stepped up to that podium and kind of announced, oh yeah, that lady's going to take this creative director spot, all that, I didn't realize that Stanley Tucci was going to be that job and that she basically sold him out to keep her own job. I must have missed that detail or something.
He was talking about it when he brought the champagne to Andy, but I think it'd be hard to connect it if that was the first time you'd seen it, just because it wasn't super clear.
Yeah. And really it wasn't until Miranda and Andy were in the limo later. And they kind of explicitly said what had happened. And then she relates it back to Andy coming to Paris instead of Emily.
Right.
That I was like, oh.
This is a big deal.
So like Stanley Tucci was this guy who obviously works for Miranda and trusts her and kind of has adapted to be able to live in that world. And then he was looking to step up and she prevented it.
Well, and I think like, how do you go back to trusting her after that, you know, for him?
Yeah.
I mean, I think that, and maybe this has happened to him before with her. So like that's why he kind of was like, you know, she'll repay me. And Andy was like, "Are you sure?" And he's like, "No, but I mean, it
Yeah.
kind of just seemed like he was not okay with it, but accepting of what happened."
That
You know?
feels very people as utility
Yeah.
to me.
Yeah.
Like, clearly, even though she could never communicate it, like, he means a great deal to Miranda, even if
Yeah.
it's just professionally.
Right.
Which I think that, no matter what job you're in,
Yeah.
we all have people that we work with that we go like, oh man, I'm better at this because they're nearby.
Sure. Absolutely.
I do a better job when I get to work with
Yeah.
them. But I think that kind of goes back to saying your needs and your feelings and asking for things. Like, if she would have said to him, hey, you're an invaluable part of my
Yeah.
ability to put this magazine out. I need you to stay here.
This is why I'm doing this. Or it just gave any
Yeah.
explanation
Or like,
directly.
yeah, I need you. Would you be willing to stay?
Yeah.
Even, to kind of let him have agency and
Right.
choice. That's one thing.
Yeah.
Who knows if he even ever finds out
Yeah.
that, and maybe he just thinks, yeah, she's,
Right.
I don't know, maybe everybody just knows that she's a snake. And
Right. And that's just what happens. But I mean, he literally seemed kind of shocked, and just was, I think, just totally blindsided. And so if she had, if she cared, I think, more for him, it would have seemed like she would have stepped aside, earlier on and told him, or at least after the fact.
Do you think she was capable of caring about people?
No.
She had that moment where Andy was in her townhouse to deliver the book, and she saw her arguing with her husband, and when they made eye contact,
Yeah.
you saw her eyes widen like crazy.
Yeah.
And I it seemed like shame, seemed like embarrassment.
Absolutely. I think she'd probably hidden her emotions for so long, or had something happen to where she had to kind of harden her shell to not be able to feel, or to not be able to be empathetic with people.
Survival.
Yeah. I don't know if it was a trauma response, or if it was just like an adaptation,
Yeah.
To what the job was requiring of her, or what. I mean, but I definitely think that maybe she wasn't able to express emotions because she hadn't allowed herself to feel them for so long.
Here's a question that I bumped up against with like a couple of clients. What do you say to somebody that's in a job where there's not necessarily room for emotion? For instance,
Yeah.
a nurse,
Yeah.
a firefighter,
Yeah.
a police officer, where it's like,
Right.
Obviously in the field that we're in,
Sure.
we're always advocating for people to be in touch with their emotions,
Yeah.
to feel them, to communicate them, to ask for their needs.
Right.
But in those types of jobs, and I'll call them high-performing jobs,
Sure.
nurse, firefighter, cop, people's lives are on the line.
Kind of high pressure.
I'm
in a
sure
sense.
there's other jobs like Andy's she's got to respond,
Sure.
kind of thing.
Sure.
What do you say to somebody that's in that kind of job?
Yeah.
And they're working in the office with you on engaging with that stuff, but they're in a job where they're literally having to turn it off.
Yeah. And I think that's a great question. I think to a point we do it too, whereas like we can't be with clients and having our emotions go everywhere because we're human still, but at the same time we have to hold the space for the client. And so I think by learning how to process it after the fact, and validating those feelings, whether it's, doing some mindfulness stuff, or doing something sensory, or doing something that's grounding, but later. I think that in the moment, like you said, you kind of have to turn it off because it's a high pressure job. It's a high, you are basically dealing with people's lives. But also I just think finding the time to validate those emotions and process, self-care, and kind of like try to learn how to, if it's grieving, if it's, whatever needs to happen for that person to kind of go back day to day.
Yeah. Okay. So it's not like muting.
Yeah, I
your
don't
feelings,
think you
your
mute
needs.
it forever. I think you mute it there.
Yeah.
On the job.
You may have to find your way in your role of engaging with it.
And maybe it's 5 minutes before you go into work and 5 minutes after. It may be picking kind of that routine and that a little bit of stability for emotions. So like if you're like, okay, I'm going to have a pep talk 5 minutes and, do positive mantras or do something, breathing, and then go into work. And then when you're sitting in your car 5 minutes after work, do the same thing.
Yeah.
So just kind of getting into the routine of what's going to work for you, of how to kind of lower the breathing, lower the nervous system, kind of get back
Regulating.
into, absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, it feels like still realizing that your emotions are valuable.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that you don't have to lose them to.
Absolutely.
But I guess they have to learn how to develop the muscle of in the moment.
Well, I definitely think I had to develop that as a therapist because I think my first year at Centerstone, I was at a middle school, really, high poverty, and I wasn't great at that. Like at first, kind of.
Did you take it home with you a lot?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Me too.
I mean, I wasn't able to really separate myself. And as I've gone on, I've really learned that skill. And I still cry in movies and TV shows and, and like take my volunteer work home with me. But I think it's different when I know I'm putting like the therapist hat on or the counselor hat on. I think I can like kind of channel it to, it's not that I don't care. It's just that to do this job every day, I have to do that.
Well, it is a skill.
Yeah.
That's why it's skill based. That's why we have to go to school and get trained.
Right.
And then be interns, and apprentice under somebody, because if it relied on our knowledge and our experience and our, I guess, personality, I'm sure that especially people that work with trauma, we'd just all be wrecks.
Right.
And we'd flame out after a very short amount of time.
And I'm definitely already an Enneagram 2, so I definitely am already the helper, already in that mindset.
You're already attuning to everybody else's.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that's
so
my wife.
I definitely have to take time for myself and recharge and, kind of figure out what to do to take care of myself, because I'm kind of, dealing with a lot of different people that come through, a lot of different, things that they're going through.
Yeah.
So.
Tell me something that your clients have taught you.
Yeah, I think like throughout working with different populations and different, levels of issues that arise, I've noticed the same, that everyone wants the same thing, is to be loved, is to be kind of have that connection. Everyone wants kind of, and it may not come out and say it, but it's kind of, deeper level of just being human. Everyone's human. And so I don't think, whatever initial thing you brought into as maybe the problem or the issue that brought you into counseling, I think that there's that underlining need just for support and companionship in a sense. And it doesn't have to be through like a relationship, but just having that social support. But I also think that I've learned that sometimes just holding space, and the client will tell you what they need most of the time, sometimes, but I don't know. I'm such a fixer that I really have learned through trial and error that that's not always the go-to, and that's not always my role. And so, clients have sometimes come in and be like, I just need to sit here. And that's what they need that day. And I think it's just taught me a lot about how to approach every session, and takes a little bit of the responsibility or pressure that I put on myself.
Yeah. When I first got into my internship, the office that I was using, shared office, there was a cork board above the desk, and on the cork board was a little note that had been tacked up.
Yeah.
And it said, if we give the client the answer, we're communicating to them that we don't believe they have what it takes inside to figure it out. And it's something, because I'm the same way, I'm a fixer, and I really there's a thing in me that feels like I'm valuable when I can give somebody something that I know that they don't know yet.
Yeah.
And I got to fight that in the therapy room, because I know that the progress that I made as a client in therapy was hard fought. And I am the person I am because I did that fight. And I don't want to rob that from my client.
Yeah, absolutely.
I want to walk with them through it, but I don't want to fight the fight for them.
Yeah. And I definitely have that quality where I like feeling needed in a sense. And so I have to fight that too, because I'm like, well, they're here for a reason, and that's great. But also like I can only plant the seed, and they kind of have to run with it and let it grow. So I have to remind myself to kind of take a step back sometimes.
Yeah.
Because I care about my clients and I want them to get better. But also you're right. Like if I just feed kind of the answers or feed what they should be doing, that's not helping them. Because A, there's no should, and B, because, they know what's best with themselves.
Yeah. Tell me something that you do to take care of yourself.
Yeah. So I get massages. That's really important to me.
I've never had one. The thought of it
oh.
creeps me out too much.
My fiance won't either. And I literally look forward to it every month.
Wow.
It's my favorite thing.
You do it once a month?
Yep.
Nice.
Once a month, yeah. So it's just amazing how much better I feel and like less tension and just like lighter in a sense.
Huh.
So I do that. I do have a peer consultation group once a month. I work out at the same gym and have a great community a few times a week. I listen to music. I watch TV, like a lot of terrible reality TV shows, but it's my escape.
Did you watch Love is Blind yet on Netflix?
Love it. Yes, of course. Yes. Did you?
I did.
Okay. Did you hate it? You don't seem very impressed.
Well, okay, so my wife was out of town. I told her I was watching it, and she's like, "What do you think?" I was like, "I don't like it in the sense of I approve." It was like watching a train wreck. Like,
yeah, it's just entertaining, and I think because we work with people, I just find it fascinating, but not in like a sad way. Like I'm excited for the couples that found love, and I don't know.
I don't know about that. I don't know if I can get there. I mean, just because of the whole premise of it.
Right.
It just seems like, man,
Yeah.
this is a recipe for disaster. And I always question
if it's
the
authentic.
legitimacy. Yeah. Like
Yeah.
I always question.
It just is. It's a good way for me to decompress in a sense, or just like a. I don't know. It just can turn my brain off a little bit. So yeah, reality TV shows would definitely go to.
Okay. I like that. So let's say that somebody was listening to our conversation
Yes.
today and they think to themselves, "Oh man, I feel like I could really connect with her.
Yeah.
I'd love to see her as a client. How can they do it?"
Yeah. So, and I don't know if we mentioned this earlier, but I did mention that I see teens through young adults. And within that, I see a lot of anxiety, a lot of life transitions, but also a lot of trauma. So, and trauma to me and to a lot of other therapists doesn't have to be this big thing that you've gone through. It could be something that's kind of stuck with you and kind of you've internalized maybe some narratives or negative cognitions or anything. So it can be you're having anxiety based on an event that you may not have even connected to it. So I don't know. I really like kind of looking at it from a trauma or just something that stuck with you approach, but also maybe a childhood approach. That's kind of my narrative, or that's where my lens, I guess. But I do see a lot of college students around the area. My office is located near Belmont and Vanderbilt. But to get a hold of me, my email address is amylazarovcounseling.com. And my phone number is 615-762-6629. And if I'm not the right fit, I'm happy to refer you to who is, because I want you guys to get the help you need, not, there's nothing in it for me if you're not getting what you need.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, that's something that I always try to impart on like potential clients that I'm talking to. And it actually has, strange enough, happened several times where somebody will contact me, "Hey, I'd love to see you."
Sure.
But for whatever reason, like schedule, like they can only come between 6 and 8 at night or something like that. And it's just not within my scope.
Yeah.
I always say, "Hey, can you tell me a little bit more?"
Yeah.
I'd love to help you find somebody. I'd love to recommend some people.
Yeah,
like,
absolutely.
Just because we're in this to do what we can to help people, but also hopefully have the humility to go, if it's not me,
Absolutely.
it's somebody else.
Yeah, definitely. And I have that spiel a lot with clients, just because or potential clients, because I don't want anyone to feel stuck. Like I've had experiences with therapists that I didn't feel like was the right fit, but at that time I didn't know that I was allowed to move on, or I didn't know that I was allowed to find the right fit. So I kind of kept going and like would get some stuff out of it, but I just didn't feel like it was as helpful as I would have liked. And like, so, the person that I currently see and usually like once a month, just kind of again for self-care, is the right fit 100%. Nice. So it's nice to have found the right fit. So I know when I'm telling clients what the right fit feels like or what that looks like. And I think that can be really valuable for clients to hear, that like, it's okay if we don't click, or it's okay if, I feel like you're beyond my scope, or it's okay if our schedules don't meet up, I want to help you find the right person.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Amy, thank you so much.
Thanks for having me. This was so fun.
Yeah,
I
I'm
hope
so
it was
glad to have
good
met
conversation.
you. Yeah. Hey, everybody. I really appreciated Amy coming on the show. And because of kind of just different circumstances allowing us to tape in her office, that was so amazing. And I love talking with her. Today for me is day 9 of social distancing. So that for me means both myself and Leanne have been able to transition from working in an office to working out of our home. We have been able to convert our upstairs guest room into an office for her. I have converted a space in our living room into a workspace for me. Which for me means both a place to edit, record, and produce the podcast, as well as a place that I can, with the help of teletherapy, video chat resources, I can have sessions with clients via video chat. And so, today is the 9th day of us doing that. Actually, I guess the 10th day for her because I was in the office one day longer. And I wanted to kind of talk about something that I'm recognizing that is happening inside of me, and in an effort of doing that, realizing that it's probably happening inside of some of you as well. Right now, we are in an unprecedented era. There is news coming out every day, but none of the news that's coming out is what I would call, I guess, helpful, because a lot of it is just reporting of numbers. X amount infected, X amount have died. Not much of it is, here's how long we can expect this to happen. Here's steps that every single person should take that we can all agree upon. In other words, right now there's just a lot of uncertainty. And, I've said on the show before, I know just enough about the Enneagram to be dangerous, not enough to help. But I know that I'm a type 6, and I find a lot of safety and security in knowing, in certainty. And right now, I was telling Leanne the other day, I'm kind of going back and forth between feeling like I am doing a good job at recognizing that I have some fear, while also regulating that, staying grounded, staying in touch with me. And that's one kind of side of where I'm at. And then I sometimes bounce to the other side of feeling almost overwhelmed with fear that the uncertainty is bringing. And when I go to that side of feeling overwhelmed with the fear, then I allow my mind to dissociate from my body and go to the future. And I start to dwell on and think about, the coming weeks, the coming months, what ifs, these kinds of things. And then when I allow my mind to do that, my anxiety goes up. And I think that's a common experience with people. Anxiety is all about the future. And in order for anxiety to rise up, we have to allow our mind to split from our body, which is in the present. And so what I wanted to do today is just put that out there and say, hey, this is something that I'm dealing with as a person. I talk about on the show all the time. I got a bad case of being a person. You got a bad case of being a person. We all have that in common. And I know that anxiety and uncertainty and fear are common human experiences. And so what I want to do today is to recognize that as something that the human race is going through right now. No matter what country you're in, no matter what city, state, no matter what ethnicity you are, nationality, race, we're all going through that. And I want to recommend something that is very helpful for me, and it's an exercise in deep breathing and using our five senses. I don't have a great name for it, so we'll just call it the countdown, okay? Because we're going to go from 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. We're going to start with, I want you to find a place in your home, in your office, wherever you're at, that you can sit down. And I want you to sit down in a way that your feet can be flat on the floor, your knees bent at a 90-degree angle, and your back straight. So you're sitting straight up. So if you need to put some cushions on the couch to do this, do that, right? So you're sitting there, your back is straight, your knees are bent at a 90-degree angle, your feet are flat on the floor, your hands are going to be on your knees. And what I want you to do now is, using your vision, I want you to say out loud 5 things that you can see. 5 things that you can see. Once you've done that, I want you to take a deep breath in through your nose, and I want you to breathe that out slowly through your mouth. And I want you to repeat that 5 times. So you're going to name 5 things that you see. You're going to take in 5 deep breaths, and you're going to exhale 5 deep breaths. Okay? Now, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to name 4 things that you can hear. 4 things that you can hear. You're going to say those out loud. After you name those 4 things that you can hear, I want you to take in 4 deep breaths through your nose. I want you to exhale 4 deep breaths through your mouth. After you complete that, I want you to say 3 things that you can smell. 3 things that you can smell. After you do that, I want you to take 3 deep breaths in through your nose, 3 deep breaths out through your mouth. After that, I want you to name 2 things that you can touch around you and how they feel. 2 things that you can touch, so maybe it's the couch, maybe it's your jeans, and also how they feel, what they feel like, the texture. Is it soft? Is it velvety? After you name those things, 2 deep breaths in through the nose, 2 deep breaths out through the mouth. And finally, our last thing, I want you to name 1 thing that you can taste. 1 thing that you can taste. And when you do that, we're going to take our final extra deep breath in through our nose and slowly exhale that out through the mouth. Okay? Now, that's our countdown exercise. I want you to keep that in your back pocket for those times that you feel like you're getting overwhelmed by anxiety and fear. I want you to do that for me. Now, the purpose behind that is, like I mentioned before, when we get overcome with our anxiety, what happens is our brain, it leaves our body, it travels to the future. There's time travel there, okay? The best way for us to achieve emotional regulation, to feel like we're back in our body and that we are getting grounded, is to employ our 5 senses, because there's no way to exercise your 5 senses except in the here and now. So it's a great way for us to get back to the here and now. That's called the countdown. All right, keep that in your back pocket. Even though right now I know that it feels like we are all so far apart, I wanna also encourage you to let the next 7 days, I want the theme of the next 7 days for you to be connection. Look for ways to connect with other people. Look for ways to feel connected. Social distancing is great for helping prevent the spread of COVID-19. It's really bad for helping to prevent feelings of isolation and loneliness. So this coming 7 days, our collective theme, you, me, everybody who's got a bad case of being a person, it's going to be connection. Thanks so much for joining me this week in the theater. I'll make sure I save a seat for you and a friend next week. Let's raise the lights, lower the curtain, and say that for this week, the theater is closed.